Thanks for watching the first episode of Chasing Frames with Tamara Lackey. It was really cool to see all that goes into being a part of a helicopter medical crew team. For me, I really enjoyed just how positive all the crew members were, even though their job isn't the safest at times. Their can-do and upbeat attitudes were super inspiring to watch as Tamara flew around with them to get an idea of what they do day in and day out, from the air and on the ground. So let's dive into On One Photo Raw 2020 and let's take a look at some of the frames that she captured. So now we're inside Photo Raw 2020. And looking at these shots, Tamara took a bunch of amazing photos, so it's going to be tough to pick our favorites. But knowing that Tamara shoots a lot of portraits, I'm assuming she's going to pick a few of her favorites before she heads in and starts modifying them. So let's do that. Let's start by picking a couple favorites, and then we'll go in and we can edit. So I'm just going to scroll to the top here, and I'm going to start with this photo here. And whenever I'm picking out my favorites of a group, I tend to pull up my film strip view mode, which I can do by hitting F on my keyboard. So now we have all of those photos in that folder at the bottom, and a larger preview in the middle. Well, to find my favorites, I'm just going to think back onto the episode. And one thing that really stood out to me in the episode was the importance of having a co-pilot. Whether it's someone to have your back in an emergency situation, or just another pair of eyes on the sky, having a co-pilot was really detrimental in a helicopter medical crew. So let's head over to this photograph here where Tamara's flying in the helicopter. I think this photo really emphasizes the importance of a co-pilot because you can see just how much is going on inside the cockpit of a helicopter. This is definitely a lot to handle for one person. So I'm going to mark this a 5-star photo by just hitting 5 on my keyboard. So let's pick one more favorite out of this group of photos. And I really like just how positive the pilots were, even though they were flying into dangerous situations the majority of the time. So let's head over to this pilot portrait. And I really like this portrait because it shows off what type of person this pilot is. You can tell he's there to help people out in any situation. This is the type of person that I would want if I was in dire need of assistance. So let's mark this a 5-star photo as well. So now I can go back to my grid view mode by hitting G on my keyboard. So let's head down to filter some of these photos, and I'll choose rating. And now if I go back into this menu and I choose descending, now if I scroll to the top, I have those 5-star photos right there. Let's start with this photograph here, the one where they're inside the cockpit. I'm just going to hit D on my keyboard and that'll take me into my Develop tab. So to start editing this photo, I think it would be cool to match what Tamara saw on the back of her camera so that we can get her perspective in this edit. So I'm going to head down in my Develop tab here, and I'm going to use this new AI match feature. So now it's matched what Tamara saw on the back of her camera when she was shooting these photos. It's evened out the shadows and the highlight tones a little bit. So now that we've developed this photo really quickly, I'm just going to head into Effects. So with this photo, I really want to bring in some warmth, a little bit of contrast, so I can incorporate a heroic look to the shot. So I'm going to add a filter, and I'm going to add a split toning filter. And one of my all-time favorites is this warm style. And I really like how it brings out the warm tones in this photo, but I'm actually going to head down to my mode, and I'm going to choose multiply. And the reason I'm choosing multiply is so that it darkens up this image a little bit. So now if I turn the split tone filter off and on, it brings in that nice warm color and blue to my shadows, but it also adds in some contrast by darkening up the photo a bit. So now that we've brought in some warm colors to this photo, I want to deal with this bright window area. So I think we could use a vignette just to tone down this area around the cockpit so that the viewer's really focused on this area in here. So let's add a filter, and I'll add a vignette. And one of my all-time favorites is this Big Softy preset. And it already does an awesome job of toning down the windows. So I'm going to head down and I'm going to grab my positioning tool, and I'm just going to make sure that it's on the middle near the cockpit. Perfect. And because this was shot on a pretty bright day, I think we could use one of Photo Raw 2020's new filters, the all-new Sun Flare filter. So let's add a filter, and I'll add that Sun Flare filter. And I'm just going to head down and I'll pull up on my amount to 100. And then I'm going to grab this positioning tool, and I'll just move this over a little bit. And inside the sunflare filter, we have the sunshine filter built right in. So if I want to incorporate a little more sunshine, I can head down and I'll just pull up on this sunshine filter a little bit. Perfect. So now if we hit the backslash key on our keyboard, we've really stylized this photo by using a few adjustments and filters. So now let's head back and let's modify that pilot portrait. I'm just going to hit G on my keyboard to go back into Browse. And I'll head over and I'll grab my portrait. And I'll just hit D to go back into the Develop tab. So with this portrait, I just want to go in and develop the tone and color quickly. And since it was shot on a pretty bright day, it seems like everything is well exposed anyway. So I'm just going to head down to my tone and color pane, and I'm going to use the new AI Auto. And that will automatically develop my tone and color settings for me. So now that we've developed the basic tone and color for this shot, I want to go in and tone down this area around the pilot. Even though the helicopter adds a lot to this photo, the machinery and equipment on it can be a bit distracting, especially if we're just focused on this pilot right here. So let's use a local adjustment layer and tone down this area around him. I'm just going to head into my local adjustment tab, and with this new local adjustment layer, I'm going to make sure it's set to darken and that the exposure is back about 1.5 stops. So now I'm going to hold down Shift and hit K on my keyboard. That's going to grab me my adjustable gradient. And rather than using my gradient, I'm going to head up to this tool modifier bar and I'm going to choose my center as a shape. So now if I drop this down, all of the local adjustment is going to be applied outside this mask. So now I can fit this mask to my pilot by these handles here. There we go. And now I'll just use these perforated edges and I'll feather it quite a bit. But now if I turn this local adjustment layer off and on, it does an awesome job of darkening these bright areas around our pilot here. So now let's head into Effects. I'll add a filter and let's just finish this photo off with a nice LUT. And in these categories, I really love this color grading category here. And one of my favorite LUTs is this Classic. So if I turn this filter off and on, it does a good job of desaturating and bringing a little bit of warmth into the pilot. So now if I hit the backslash key on my keyboard, I really like how we've toned down the area around the pilot so that the viewer isn't distracted with all of the bright areas on the helicopter. Thanks for watching the first episode of Chasing Frames and following along as I edit inside ON1 Photo Raw 2020. I'm Dylan with ON1 and stay tuned for more.